Right, time to take a look at what's making headlines around the world. And Alison Sargent is back in the studio with us. Alison, we're going to start with that very dramatic scene we saw yesterday in The Hague when Slobodan Praljak killed himself. He drank poison after the guilty verdict was announced, after his appeal hearing, his 20-year sentence was upheld.
Right, and that picture of him drinking the poison is on the front pages of newspapers around the world today. Before he drank it, he shouted, "I am not a criminal," and that declaration is the main headline on the front page of a leading Croatian paper, Večernji List. There's an almost celebratory quality, actually, to some of the coverage in the Croatian press. Praljak treated as somewhat of a martyr here. In an opinion piece in this same paper, one writer has very strong words, actually. He says, Praljak spit on the face of the International Criminal Tribunal, and if the third-rate analysts of international politics really looked at the situation, well, they would do the same. Now, the Croatian government is also defending this idea that Praljak was sort of sending a message with his suicide. You can read in Bosnian Insight that the Croatian prime minister called the convictions a, quote, moral injustice. He said that the UN court's insistence that Croatia played a role in the Bosnian War was a, quote, contradiction with historical truth and facts. Croatia's role in the war, though, was actually complicated, as Bosnian Insight explains. They quote a Bosniak politician who says that Croatia both helped and hurt Bosniaks during the war, and this politician said the tribunal puts an end to a very dark part of history.
Well, although, as that heated reaction suggests, that part of history isn't actually behind us.
Exactly. There are actually fears that this verdict could, and the suicide following it could actually resurrect some very bad history. There's an interesting article in the Croatian magazine Forum that quotes a Croatian philosopher who says this verdict will not lead to reconciliation, but is actually in danger of increasing tension in the region. Now, French paper Libération has a report from Mostar, which is the city in Bosnia that was the main site of the Croatian military action. They call it a symbol of continuing ethnic tension in Bosnia, and the reporter describes a city that's really divided between Croats and Bosniaks. Libé met one Serbian Croat woman who said, peaceful or not, she'll never be able to live with a Bosniak Muslim. Another said she was sad the war criminals continued to show support, but then she refused to give reporters her name because she was worried about being attacked for having said that. A third described the situation in the city as ethnofascism, with political parties making the different ethnic groups fear each other as a way of maintaining their power.
Wow. Right, we're moving on to another story now, the EU-Africa Summit, which is continuing today in Abidjan.
Right, it's on the front page of the Ivory Coast paper, Fraternité Matin. They talk about the three major challenges for Africa, that is, opportunities for youth, climate change, and security, according to them. Now, those are the big topics that Ivory Coast hopes to tackle during this summit, but the major challenge that Europe hopes to tackle is migration. As we saw in the French press, it soared to the top of the agenda after the shocking footage of migrants being sold as slaves in Libya. Jeune Afrique calls that footage an electric shock for both Europe and Africa.
Okay, well, speaking of an electroshock, US President Donald Trump sent one through the UK yesterday with a series of retweets of far-right anti-Muslim videos, unverified far-right
right,
anti-Muslim
he sure
videos,
did.
I should say.
Right, Rochelle. Now, Trump's Twitter tirades are nothing new, but these really baffled and angered people in the UK. The Guardian's head of U.S. News called it a new low for the American president. He said, quote, even by the standards of the most exceptional of U.S. presidents, the stream of bile left observers struggling to find the words. And the consequences, this writer says, could actually be very serious, which is why people are so upset. One observer at the Southern Poverty Law Center who warns that depicting Muslims the way these videos did can lead to hate violence. It also prompted an editorial, it's worth saying, from Brendan Cox, who was the husband of Joe Cox, the MP, you'll remember, who was murdered by far-right extremists, so that violence really coming to pass. And one cartoonist at the Times, I also wanted to show you, kind of points out how baffling Trump's tweet was yesterday, especially in the light of the other events that were taking place in the world. We see there Trump watching that missile launch from North Korea, saying, I'm going to do something about explosive material that can reach millions in the West. I'm going to retweet it. And we see that explosive material that reaches millions in the West is not North Korea's missile, it's actually these videos from that far-right group, Britain First.
Well, of course, British Prime Minister Theresa May condemned those tweets from Trump, but it seems when Trump tried to respond, he missed the mark.
He certainly did. Trump needs to verify his Twitter handles next time. He tried to tweet to Theresa May telling her to focus, not to focus on him. The problem, he didn't double check it, and actually Theresa May's real Twitter handle,
It's a mouthful.
I know, I'm going to get there. Twitter handle actually has an underscore in it. So instead, he tweeted to @Theresa May, which is this Theresa you can see here, Teresa Scrivener, who has only 6 followers, clearly not very active on Twitter.
And not the
Luckily
British
for
Prime
her-
Minister.
Yeah, not the British Prime Minister. Lucky for her, though, her account is private.
Okay, Alison, thanks very much for that.